Last week we ended up following the motorboat Calypso away from the main island of the Scillies. On board her, the former mayor of the islands. He's out on the water this evening with some friends and colleagues and a cargo of instruments. They're bound for one of the off-islands of the Scillies for St. Martin's, and they're coming here to bring the islanders something to ease the seclusion of their island life. St. Martin's has one pub, around 70 permanent islanders, and tonight a swarm of campers and people who've come over from the other islands to see the former mayor at work. Roy Duncan wore the Scilly's chain of office for years. His council chairmanship is remembered with his august predecessors. The story goes that one night when the band was playing, someone came in and threatened to complain to the council about the noise. "You can do it right here," said the landlord, because the chairman's on drums, the treasurer's on bass, and the secretary's on lead guitar. People on this island have a way of looking at things. The landlord's idea of a complete change is a holiday in the Outer Hebrides, and the islander I've come to see really surprises me. Keith Lowe agrees that people on the main island, where most of tonight's crowd comes from, have a stainless reputation for decent, crime-free living. But he says that's nothing to the way people behave on the small islands.
So you're convinced that the off-islands they're better for you than the big island?
I think they're better for people, because people know people. You do not rob someone you're going to see tomorrow. You do not hit somebody you're going to see tomorrow, and you do not do anything to distress somebody whom you might need assistance from a little later. You just work together, and you're cohesive, and you're one group.
So this island that Keith is showing me is not just free of crime, it's got a crime vacuum. He was born on St. Martin's, he grew up here, and he wanted to stay here. His great-grandfather spent his life on the island fishing and farming, and so did his grandfather, and their way of life was what Keith wanted. But Keith's mother had other plans. She farmed flowers, and maybe she found it limiting, because when Keith arrived, she began to steer him towards a life in a place called England. He went over there and qualified and worked in London and became deputy superintendent of a boys' home, and then he turned down a year's course at Oxford and came back to his island to be a fisherman. We're up near the old Daymark. It's a sort of daytime lighthouse to help sailors get their bearings, because he wants to have a look at the way the seabirds are hunting. The birds show him whether the fish are running close in or out in the difficult waters beyond the rocks.
See, and they're searching, and there's 3, 4 together there. There's definitely fish there.
Is there any sign that they're going to make it easy for you today?
No. Wind's offshore, the birds are working a long way outside. Where I would like to go today is in this bay here, but as you can see, Clearing Ledge is looking a little unfriendly, to put it mildly. The top of the Fleming is up there, and if we were to work there, it might be a little bit more interesting getting back when the tide turns.
The birds are telling you that the fish are far out, there's a swell getting up, it's windy, it's going to be difficult, but you're going fishing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather have a desk job on the mainland?
I could be very rude, but I've tried that, and it's not what I want to do. I would earn a lot more money if I was there. So as I say, I did 4 years on the mainland. It doesn't give me anything in the way of satisfaction or the contentment which I have living on St. Martin's.
Keith's boat might remind you of a mussel shell, but it's not much bigger. He lies back because if he sits upright, he'll be likely to capsize. Conditions aren't too promising, but the seabirds said there were fish about, and it's worth putting the nets out before sunset to see what they catch overnight.
wind actually is a little bit wrong, but I've got fish ordered, so you've got to try and do the best you can. I shot away what are known as surface drift nets, mainly for pilchard, herring or mackerel. Ideally for that, the wind should be just playing in through here, but it's not. But I went up the cliff this afternoon and there were gannets working, so we should get enough to fulfill the immediate orders. And if we're lucky, there'll be a bit more besides. But the thing is, if you're selling locally, even if you don't make a profit on the day, it's very important to make sure those who've ordered fish have got what they want, so they keep coming back to you.
Ken's home belongs to Prince Charles's Duchy of Cornwall. Most of the Scillys do. His rent is set low because the Duchy's policy is to help islanders like Keith, who fish and farm and generally keep Cylonian traditions going. He's living the simple life, the island life that townies dream of, only it's harder work than dreaming. An island fisherman's life may be lyrical to look at, but it's backbreaking to live. To make ends meet on days when the tides are wrong for fishing, he works on a farm near his cottage, and then, as his mother did, he helps out in the flower fields. Next morning, the sea is lumpy on top with a bit of growl, as they say here, and it's time to bring in the nets. He's a 60s man, is Keith, shaped by Bob Dylan, flower power, peace and love. And unlike many of those forgotten idealists, he hasn't drifted away into marketing or accountancy or computer software. He's kept his wallet thin and his faith intact. He's let wind and sea and earth shape his existence. For today's catch, he's made 2 two-hour trips to shoot the nets and haul them in. He's used 50 yards of nets, 24 feet deep, that cost him 500 pounds, and he's brought in 1 pilchard. If you like your islands remote, then the ultimate island must be this one. The westernmost point of the Scillies, the westernmost habitation in England until it went automatic recently, the Bishop Rock Lighthouse. In the 2 centuries before it was built, there was an average of 1 wreck every week on the Scillies. Building this tower on a spike of rock in the middle of a stormy nowhere was a challenge, and success depended in the end on finding somewhere not too far away that they could row or sail to at the end of a day's work, somewhere which was big enough for a headquarters. The Bishop is 5 miles from the nearest inhabited island, so when they decided to build it, they set up a base on the nearest rock that was big enough to take a few homes and a workshop. That's this one. Rosevere, it's called. This is as far west as we'll be coming in the whole of this trip round the islands. The next stop in that direction would be New York. Men lived here on Rosevere on and off for the best part of 40 years while they were building that lighthouse. Their first attempt, begun in 1847, was with a lattice steel tower. After 3 years, it was swept away, and they started work on this one. They used slabs of granite, pre-cut and numbered, like curved bits of Lego, and after 8 years, they had it finished. But the tower shook in heavy seas, and cracks began to appear, so in 1858, they began to add an extra skin of granite. They finally got it finished in 1887. The last of those lighthouse builders' homes still left out here on Rosevere is this one. These days, it reeks of guano, bird droppings. The men who finished that first stone tower wanted to celebrate their 10-year labor of mercy, and they held a great party out here. Their wives and girlfriends came across from the other islands, and it was the most westerly bash ever held in the British Isles. The dancing and the singing went on till late into the Atlantic night. It's time to move on to an island that's inhabited today. Bryher, on the left, has 78 people living on it, and one of them I found on his diving boat just off the coast. It's taken years of working from Bryher, diving on the countless wrecks that carpet the Scillian seabed, for Mac Mace to get a boat built to his own design, complete with this inboard entrance from the deep. He came to Bryher from Nottingham 16 years ago with his wife. They love the island. At first, they lived in a boat, while his wife started a guest house, and he built up a diving business.
What's it like down there today?
Dark. Murky. It's not very clear at the moment. There's a sort of ground sea on that's mucked all the bottom up. But it's not cold at this time of year.
Is it because the sea around here is so littered with wrecks that you love the place?
You know, what you see of Scilly above water is pretty damn beautiful. You go down here and it's as fabulous as anywhere in the world.
Sierra Hotel Oscar Papa, say the flags, S-H-O-P. And Tracy, the wife of the diver, is making a rare visit to the island's general store. Rare because with a guest house to run, she orders most things direct from the wholesalers and has them shipped over. But they do a rather good cheddar here, and anyway, it's more sociable than shopping by phone. It's more sociable, too, than Tesco's probably was in the days when Tracy lived in Nottingham.
I want a pound of cheddar, please, as well. I really do want a pound of cheddar.
The guest house is Bank Cottage, and Tracy's life in the season revolves around dinner, bed and breakfast for 9. All sorts of people come to Bryher. She had a bishop staying last week, and at the moment the guests who've been drawn to this corner of the islands range from a bird-watching bank manager to a windsurfing social worker. To keep going, Mac and Tracy turn their hands to whatever the island offers. They've built up an export trade to gift shops in Bermuda, cleaning and packing spiny sea urchins that Mac brings up from the seabed, at the same time as diving on everything from treasure galleons to sewer outfalls. Their hours have been long, they've gone for years without mains electricity, they've endured what you might see as hardship.
We call it adventure, but hardship perhaps is a better word. Okay.
What do you think about the differences between life on and off island like Bryher and over on St Mary's on the big island?
Oh, quite different. The sea actually doesn't really dominate the life of St Mary's as it does on the off islands. I would never even book a hair appointment without consulting a tide chart for a start, because I might not be able to get there if the tide's wrong, or whereas, you know, it wouldn't sort of apply to ladies living on St Mary's.
The ladies on St Mary's don't need a storeroom like Tracy's either, but getting your supplies by the boatload is part of life for quite a few people on the off-islands.
What about the business of getting used to living on a small island, a small community? How did you find that?
On an island like this, you get on very well with maybe a third of the people. You jog along with another third, and there are a third that really, given the choice, you wouldn't have anything to do with. But that, as you're all enclosed on an island, you've actually got to get on with everybody. So the third that become your friends are great, and the rest you just nod and say good morning to. But you can't really fall out with too many people because we all need each other. You can't really be totally independent on an island like this because there's always going to be a time when something goes wrong and you need help.
Do you think it takes a certain kind of person to live on an island?
A certain kind of person to be happy here, yes.
Rooms with a view and unmade beds. Quite a change from the printing and packaging business that Tracy and Mac used to have in Nottingham. A change for the better? Of course. There's no islander more dedicated than a converted islander.
Tracy, this work is the price you pay for being here, I think, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is. Nobody really likes bed making, but then it's not too bad, considering.
Does it ever seem to be too high a price?
Definitely not, no.
What about when you have to clean the 4 lavatories of the guest rooms and so on? What about that?
Well, this is not a job I would have chosen, but it's part of the whole, so it's worth it.
I get the feeling there's no price you wouldn't pay to live on this island.
Yes, you're probably right. People do a lot worse than I do to stay here, so toilets are not too bad.
What's so special about this island, Mike?
Oh dear, wait a minute, I got... That's an awful question.
The odd man out among the off-islands is the privately owned one with the famous gardens, Tresco. The gardens are not manicured and prissy. They're a sublime blend of order and subtropical chaos. Flowers and curry bushes perfume the air with an aroma you could call Chanel Vindaloo. Frank Naylor is the grand old man of Tresco. He spent his working life in these gardens that were begun by a rich Victorian who bought the island and ordered a small paradise to be created. Over the years, as ship after ship has run onto the rocks of Scilly, the Dorian Smith family, who own Tresco, have brought to their garden the relics of catastrophe. The goddess, the Independenza, the Good Hope, the chieftain, and the Alessandro II. They've come from long ago and far away. They're outsiders. And so, in a way, is Frank.
But after 57 years on the island, you're still a Lincolnshire man then?
I am really. I know, I always used to say it to the commander, Dorian Smith, that I was going home from my holiday. And he used to look at me, home, he said. This is your home, Frank, he said. You've been here all these years, he said. This is your home. I said, no. I said, my home is where my mother is. I said, so I'm going back to Lincolnshire to see her. That's where I went every year.
But your mother must be long dead, so where's your home now?
Not all that long. She lived to be 98. Yes.
So where is your home now?
Well, I guess I've still got brothers in Lincolnshire, of course, alive, but I suppose this is my home now, really. Now my mother and father's gone.
There are 1.5 more islands in the Scillies that are inhabited. 1.5 because although the larger one, St. Agnes, is a proper island, the little one, Gyu, is joined to it until the tide comes in by a sandbar. Gyu is one of those part-time islands like St. Michael's Mount and Burr Island, and it has just 2 houses and this front path that disappears beneath the waves twice a day. At one time, the island was owned by an engineer who bought Gyu to retire to after a life of travel. And that was how his son, Danny Hick, came to spend 14 years as a Gyu Islander. Today, he lives this side of the bar on St. Agnes, which has to be slightly less romantic than being cut off over there beyond the rising waves.
The water across the sandbar is all quite fun and everything, and it isolates you sometimes when you really like it, but it makes day-to-day living quite a bit harder, I think.
So are you actually quite glad not to be living over there?
Yes, I mean, from the practical point of view, I mean, it's not the easiest place to have small children, although they're grown up now, but at the time, and to earn a living. It just adds that little bit extra.
So it's much better, really, to be living over here on this really big island.
I think so. It's got, I mean, St. Agnes has got 90% of what Gyu has got, you know, without the hassle. You know, it's as simple as that. I mean, Gyu is a nice idea until you actually come to, you know, run a business from there, and then it's a nightmare.
They used to say in the Scillies that an island was an island and not just a rock if it had enough grass to support a sheep. Nowadays, an island is an island in some folks' view if it has enough grass and people to support that philosophical triumph of English ingenuity that is a cricket match. For 20 years now, Danny Hick has lived on St. Agnes and made his living as what his business card describes as a model shipwright. He gets orders from all over, little gigs for the shops on the main island, through to big sailing ships for far-off collectors. Sometimes he goes to, say, London with one of his more complicated models to complete the rigging at the home of a client. As a boy, he lived with his engineer father at mines in the Caribbean and in the Andes. You might think that a little island like St. Agnes would seem rather restricting after such an exotic childhood.
Well, the funny thing is that people who don't live on an island think that it visualise it being claustrophobic, but I find the mainland much more claustrophobic. I mean, here, from most parts of the island, you can see at least one part of the horizon. There, if you stand more in the middle of the island, you can look around and see horizon everywhere, 360 degrees. Now, how can that be claustrophobic? I mean, you can see as far as anyone can see, really, can't you?
Will you spend the rest of your life here on this island?
Well, I think it looks that way, yeah. But I mean, the more you commit yourself to a place like this, the more difficult it is actually to move to the mainland for all sorts of reasons, you know. You should go past a certain stage, and then, you know, you're really committed to a place like this. You know, you can't change to a mainland life, I don't think, and you don't want to.
No one seems to want to leave the Scillys, but pretty soon I'll have to. For a last word on the Scilonians, I came to someone who spent the last few years here living among the islanders, Joy Glidden from South London. We cruised between the islands on a catamaran built by another mainlander who liked Scilly enough to have settled here. After her time here, what does Joy think of the islands and the islanders?
Island people. I'm from the mainland. I've only been here for 3 years, but actually the islanders themselves are a lovely breed of people. They're very gentle, very open, very confident, very independent. I suppose you have to be though. It's quite wild and woody sometimes in the winter, literally, and you have to be independent of yourself.
Is it safer than living in Croydon, South London?
Well, I was only there for a little while, yeah. It's quite a safe place. That's one of the beauties is, you know, all the young people, especially the girls, they can just do whatever they like, really. From the children especially, they're very, very safe here. And the women are safe, and, you know, we just do what we want to do.
A confident and gentle, open breed of people? That's pretty much what I've found here. I've got a ferry to catch. I'm travelling on to Lundy Island next. Across the water we can hear a choir practicing one of those tender Cornish songs, but it's time to leave the Scilonians.
I see the foe advancing